This is Castle 1. Race officer speaking.
Lane line is on boundary up ahead, 35 seconds out.
A bit lower and faster here.
That's a good one, Jimmy.
Still gaining on the lane line there.
We're looking at 10.5 and 42. Matching him on the boundary, yeah. Copy.
Hello podcast listeners, and welcome back to part 2 of our fascinating look at the Ocean Race. Formerly known as the Volvo Ocean Race, the Whitbread before that. For 50 years this race has been one of the toughest crewed challenges in our sport. And as I record this, the fleet are charging south down the Atlantic towards the islands of Cape Verde. And I don't say charging lightly. They left Alicante on Sunday and have been clocking some serious speeds up in the high 20s. Currently averaging almost 500 miles over 24 hours. That's some seriously quick sailing. In part 2, we talked to 3 of the 5 teams, chatting to Charlie Enright, Kevin Escoffier and Annie Lush. And we briefly touched on why this edition of the race is different to any previous editions. So do go back and have a listen before going any further with part 2. Before we move on, if you're enjoying season 4 of the podcast, then please do show your support for the pod at buymeacoffee.com/sailing podcast. It's dead easy to use, takes a couple of minutes, and your support helps keeps us ad-free so we can keep on delivering these uninterrupted stories. If you've done so already, a big thank you for the coffees. If not, then please do head over and take a look. So, here we are at the Ocean Race. I recorded this edition of the podcast out in Alicante, the home to the race for several editions now, and spoke to everyone on the podcast in the 2 days before the race start. So I'm recording this just a couple of days after the fleet took off on leg 1, down to the Cape Verde Islands. There's 2 fleets in leg 1 of the race. The Volvo Ocean 65s are taking part in several of the European legs, competing for the Sprint Cup, while the IMOCA fleet of foiling monohulls are doing a lap of the planet as per the traditional ocean race route. In this edition, we talk to British rising star Will Harris, sailing on Boris Herman's Militia, and we speak to established French offshore superstar Paul Mehat, skipper of Biotherm. And we also talk ocean race business, the new makeup of the race and the future with ocean race boss Johan Salen, a one-time sailor in the race back in the 1989 edition. I hope you enjoy the time I spent at the 2023 Ocean Race.
I think it's going to be really exciting to see these foiling boats kind of in these conditions.
For the 50th anniversary of the race, maybe it's not so bad to have this long epic leg.
We will probably go faster with the crew on board because it's a lot of work on a foiling boat.
In our build-up to the last Vendee Globe back in late 2020, we featured an interview with German offshore sailor Boris Herman. A modest, deep-thinking sailor determined to raise the profile of offshore sailing back home in Germany. He's just competed in the Route de Rhum and has assembled a campaign and crew for the Ocean Race. Boris did in fact agree to come on the pod, so Boris, many thanks. But as often happens at race starts, a last-minute change of plan meant he called on his trusty co-skipper, Will Harris, to fill his spot. All very last minute, so a massive thanks for Will for stepping in. Will is a young British competitor with a real and visible passion for sailing offshore. He's been sailing with Boris for some time and is a vital part of the Militia team. Thanks for joining us, Will. It's great to have you on the podcast. Ocean Race number 1 for you. How are you feeling just ahead of start day?
So it's great to be here, Shirley. Thanks for having me. We're 36 hours or so from the start of leg 1 and what will be my first ocean race ever. So, there's a few nerves there for sure. It's as you'd kind of expect. We've got a long road ahead of us, 6 months and 7 legs sailing around the world. But You know, the team's done a great job of getting the boat ready, and I think we're as ready as we can be. So I'm not too stressed about that, and we've kind of got to just see how it goes. Try and not let the emotions kind of overcome of kind of everything that's going on here. You know, there's so much going on around, and especially at the race village, and it's really cool to see how many people are involved in this race and the start of it. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into it.
You're on Malaysia, Boris Herman's IMOCA. How did that come about? You sailed with him quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So Boris and I have known each other since 2019, and we were actually put in touch through just through a journalist while I was sailing in La Solitaire du Figaro, and Boris was looking for a co-skipper for the TJV, and he basically gave me the opportunity to come and sail with him, and it was about the time that he was also sailing with Greta Thunberg across the Atlantic to the UN COP conference in New York. And that really was kind of the spark to the whole campaign. You know, we started with 4 or 5 people, you know, kind of on threadbare trying to keep the boat going, and suddenly now we're kind of at a team of 40 people, and it's just been building up over the last 3 years. And Boris and I get on really well on the boat. We work quite well. You know, we're always pushing each other, but you know, not so much that we don't get along on the boat. So no, it's been a cool 3 years with Team Milizia.
Before we get into things, Will, am I right that you worked on the previous ocean race for the race committee? I mean, that's right, isn't it? What was your role?
Yeah, exactly. So in the last edition of the race in 2017-18, I was here in Alicante, living here for just under a year. I can't say I learned much Spanish while I was here, but my role was basically to monitor the boats while they're sailing. There was 4 of us, and we were doing a watch system, but on land. So we would get all the data from the boats, and we could monitor them to make sure that everything's going safely on board. They're playing by the rules as well. You know, we were monitoring to make sure they weren't, you know, cheating in any way by communicating off the boat. So we monitor all the communications on and off, but also helping out with any sort of crisis events. So it could be something as small as someone having a cut and they need to get in contact with the doctor, and you know, to manage it properly. To, you know, we had a couple of dismastings, and we also had a man overboard during the race. So you know, it's quite an important role, and I got a lot of experience from this. You know, to kind of experience all the good and bad things that happen on each boat. I would say I kind of got 7 boats worth of experience by sitting in race control and really going through the data of everything that's happening. So I'm actually very happy to be kind of sat here with this experience behind me, because although I haven't done a race before, you know, I've followed one very closely from race control. And the other role was also to tell the story a bit, so to kind of explain to the general public why one boat might be choosing a different strategy to another. So weather routing and trying to explain a bit the tactics behind offshore sailing and kind of ocean sailing. So it was another opportunity for me to kind of build up my own experience in navigation and things like that. So yeah, it was very good.
Oh, you did a great job. It must be slightly weird now, having lived a race day by day remotely from here in Alicante, to now getting ready yourself to cross the start line and take on, you know, a mammoth challenge.
Yeah, no, it's especially being here in Alicante. I have a lot of friends from the race from when I was working there, and it's really cool to see them and to say hi, and you know, they're kind of shaking their hands again, and you know, I know that 4 years ago they knew that I wanted to do this race, and no, it makes them really happy and me really happy to kind of be here and now actually on one of the boats. So that's a really kind of special feeling to have that.
Talk to us about the boat. Boris had a press conference the other day and was very open about some foil problems the team had. I mean, you were on a fairly untested set for the race, I think. What's all that about?
Yeah, so we've kind of in the last 6 weeks, I would say, building up to this race, we discovered a big issue with the foils. And what's happened is the structure in the foil has effectively fallen apart, which has made our old pair of foils unusable. Now the hydrofoils on the boats are extremely complicated part. You know, they're designed to lift these 8 or 9 ton boats out of the water, and you know, in sort of a piece of carbon that's only 50 centimeters wide at maximum is, you know, it's taking up to 50 tons of load. So they take 6 or 7 months to build, and at this point, when we realized that our old foils were broken, it was kind of a moment where potentially this whole race was at risk, and potentially we couldn't even take the start. We were very lucky to find another pair of foils which had just been finished to be built. They're quite different to our current shape, but it was our only option to be on the start line. And so with the design team, they kind of worked around the clock over Christmas to figure out how to integrate the foils into the boat. It's you have to work out in where the load is going into the structure of the boat, and you have to be very careful with these things to make sure that nothing's going to break, and it's not going to break another set of foils, for example. So the team had to work really hard over Christmas to even be on the start line. And in fact, we only put these foils in the first time 8 days ago now. So and we've done 4 days of sailing on them now. So we're still a bit touch and go. It's it's not a lot of practice on these foils. So far so good. We're feeling confident. They've really shown that we're quite happy with the shape of the new foils, and they seem to work fairly well. We seem to be as fast as the other boats. We won the import race last weekend, so it's kind of a really nice boost for the team, especially after all this hard work, and kind of a nice reward for them for us to win that. And now we've just got to test them out in the first 2 legs and see how they go on.
Well, there might only be 5 boats, but they're all pretty class acts. Talk to me, Will, about the rest of the fleet. What do you make of your competitors?
Yeah, when I have a look at the lineup, I see a very high level bunch of sailors. They've really kind of picked the top level offshore racers there are. Kind of slightly more favoured towards the French Vendee Globe kind of short-handed scene. You have a lot of top level sailors from the Figaro and from the IMOCAs as well. Kevin's picked Tom Lepers. He's a previous winner of La Solitaire Figaro, and Sam Goodchild, who's also another very strong British sailor from the Figaro. And I think that's a really, really strong team. But I think what's going to be interesting is how they work together. I'm not sure any of them are used to crewed sailing. And on the other end of the scale, you've got 11th Hour, who is predominantly sort of previous Volvo Ocean Race veterans who are used to sailing as a crew and exploiting these boats as a crew, which is very important. And what we've opted for is kind of a middle ground. We've got Boris, Nico and I from a bit more of a short-handed background, and Rosalind, who's from a more crewed background, and we're trying to work out the best of both worlds, having this very good kind of tactical and performance focused short-handed sailers with some people who can utilize the fact we have a crew and we can communicate well and work well together. So we'll have to see how it goes. I'm interested to know how the dynamics work on the other boats, because it's 40 days together. If it doesn't work out, then you're going to be stuck on the boat with them. So I really hope that everyone gets along. But.
Yeah, and there's not that many of you. There's only 4 crew and a media person.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's not many. Yeah.
It's almost semi short-handed, I would say. We were doing the medical course, the medical training for the start of the race a few weeks ago, and made you really realize that if one person goes down from a medical problem, then that's 25% of your crew gone. And so we've really got to look after each other and make sure everyone's feeling like they're part of the team and all enjoying it, but also looking out for each other in terms of kind of physical and mental well-being. So I think that's going to be a really important aspect of it, that there's only 5 of us on board.
Yeah, it's got to work. And Will, you have a strong tactical and navigational role. How different is it running navigation on a boat like this, on a foiling boat with more top-end speed? How much of a different mindset is that?
I think what I've really noticed, the difference between sort of the IMOCA and something like a Figaro or a much smaller kind of short-handed boat, offshore racing boat, is how much more you have to dig into the data. We're always looking at the sensors and the numbers, because when you're inside these boats, that's really all you've got to go off. And it's how these boats are sailed now. It's not so much on what you feel in the helm or what you feel by looking at the sails and stuff. It's more about what the data is telling you. Is it saying that by adjusting the rake or adjusting the keel or changing sail is making it faster or not? And that also applies for things like the weather and navigation. You know, you've always got to be looking at how the polars and the speed of the boat is changing, because, you know, for example, we've just put some new foils in the boat, and that's actually meaning we have to change the overall speed of the boat. We're more performant on reaching angles now rather than downwind. And it's all about the data analysis and kind of looking at the numbers a lot more. So it's kind of myself and Nico who are in charge of this a bit, and Nico's got a very good background in kind of weather and strategy in these IMOCA boats. But I think in the 7 legs as well, you know, leg 1 we might not be so hot off the blocks, but you know, if we do well in kind of increasing the performance and looking through the data, then we can speed up through the race. And I think that it's all about the learning curve through the race as well. Is the faster you learn, the more likely you are to win, and we've seen that in the last 2 or 3 editions of the race, I think. So
yeah, for sure, you can come back. We've seen that.
Yeah.
Boris sailed the route to Rum single-handed, of course, just a few months ago. I mean, how much alteration is there in configuration, if any, to run these IMOCA single-handed or crewed? How does that work?
So I think initially people thought we would have to completely change the layout of the cockpit and completely rebuild the boat. But the reality of it is we put on 2 more sleeping bags, we put on 2 more bunks and a bit more food. Well, quite a lot more food, I'd say. And then you're off. It's, you know, the boats. You couldn't really imagine to change the whole layout of the boat, because you've basically got to have an entirely different boat. You know, it works perfectly as a single-handed boat or 5 people on board. The difference is you end up being a bit more on top of each other. I think that's where we have a bit of an advantage in our boat, because we have a lot more space inside. We have a lot bigger cockpit and bigger living space in the back where we can stand up, whereas the other boats, you know, they're very cramped. They've gone for absolutely minimal space because they're a bit more focused around the Vendee Globe. And I think that's going to really pay to work to our advantage, because we can get 3 or 4 people working in the cockpit at the same time rather than just 1 or 2. So it's not much changes really at all in the boat. So.
What do you think we can expect from the IMOCA on this course, Will? Will we see, you know, record times from stop to stop?
I think the IMOCAs are going to be very impressive. When I think back to the last race, one thing that really caught my eye, I think it caught a lot of people's eyes, is these images of the Volvo 65s going in Southern Ocean waves, downwind, and just just looking absolutely incredible. You're really life at the extreme, you know, at the edge of the world, kind of pushing through the waves. And what we've missed in the IMOCAs and in the Vendee Globe is a cameraman, an onboard reporter to actually capture these things happening. And that's what we have now. You know, we have 4 crew and this 1 media man who's dedicated to filming and to flying the drone and to actually capturing what happens. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see these foiling boats kind of in these conditions and to really see what actually happens down here. So in terms of the speed, I think the IMOCA's a very interesting boat in that it's a boat that's designed for around the world, although with the foils now, their most optimal conditions is flat water. So one leg I really think is going to be interesting is the North Atlantic from Newport to Aarhus, because you have very flat seas here. You have depressions forming very early on, and you have with the flat water you can really get the boats foiling. And I'd really hope to see an IMOCA push the 600-mile mark, and at the moment the record stands at about 560. So with a crew and with a nice a North Atlantic low, I think they could be really, really fast. And also that leg is counting for double, so it's definitely the one that the teams are going to be pushing for.
I love that your head's already in the game. I mean, how many months till you're in the North Atlantic?
Yeah.
It's quite a while. I absolutely love that. And Will, you will skipper the boat for some of the legs. Just talk to me a little bit about your role and how that will work with Boris.
Yeah, exactly. So Boris is going to step away from 2 of the legs of the race. It's a very big program, to do a Vendee Globe, an Ocean Race, and then another Vendee Globe in 2024. So I think he needs a bit of time with the family, and also it brings the team kind of coming back stronger because people can get a bit of rest. And so for these legs, I'm going to step in as the skipper on board. I think probably because I've been with the team and have the most experience with the crew out of all of them, and I think that's quite important. But there's a lot of responsibility there, which I really look forward to. I think it really brings a better sailor out in me, having responsibility like this. But obviously I'll be a lot to think about because it's a big, they're a big expensive pieces of kit, and you've got to look after them, and I really want to make sure I bring it back to Newport in one piece for Boris, and hopefully to say we can win the leg as well. So that will be the Itajai to Newport leg that I'll be kind of taking the helm for that. For my own future, I want to try and do the Vendee Globe in 2028, and the more experience I can get in being in charge of these IMOCA boats is the better. So I'm really happy about the opportunity to have this.
Well, we can't wait to watch.
Yeah.
Well, many thanks for your time and all the very, very best.
Great, thanks, Shirley.
A Vendee Globe hopeful for 2028. I can't help but think we may well be hearing from Will Harris again on this podcast. He's a real talent. We wish him, Boris, and all the team at Malizia well with their ocean race. Just before the start of the previous edition of what was then the Volvo Ocean Race, the then CEO surprised the sailing world by making the decision to step down. In his place, it was announced that the Swedish pairing of Richard Brizius and Johan Salen would oversee the race. The pair have been involved in offshore sailing for decades. They'd run race-winning campaigns on several editions and have even sailed the race themselves. So when Volvo took the decision to step away from title sponsorship, it was no surprise that the Swedish duo stepped up to try and guide the race through what looked like some choppy water. They've had some criticism, but have put a stopover-based global sporting event together throughout what has been, as we all know, very challenging times. I chatted to Johan on the eve of departure in Alicante. His relief at getting going was clearly visible. So coming up, we discuss some of the challenges and issues involved in carrying this important sailing event into the future. Johan, thanks for joining us on the podcast. President of the Ocean Race, and with just 24 hours, less than 24 hours now until the start, a very busy man. So Johan, thanks for sitting down with me. I mean, how exciting is it to be getting the race going, getting it underway?
It's hard to describe, but it's so great. It's super intense, but at the same time super positive. It's been a really long lead up. Complicated sometimes, a lot of uncertainty. I know we didn't, but we know that some people speculated or were wondering 2 years ago, 1.5 year ago, whether the race was even happening. So being here now with the sun, the wind, with sponsors, teams, representatives from the host cities, and everybody smiling and super happy and getting going, it's undescribable. It's such a relief, and normally this period should be really stressful, but it just feels like a big relief. So it's very nice, super nice.
You're no stranger to the race, of course, Johan. You sailed in the Whitbread in the late 80s, I'm thinking, but you've managed multiple Volvo Ocean Race teams. What does the race mean to Johan?
It's, who was it, Peter Blake, who used to say that, it gets into your blood and you never get rid of it, or something along those lines. And that's really been the case for me. I mean, I've been involved in the race now for a bit over 30 years. I've had some spells with other activities and other missions I've done, nothing to do with sailing. And when you do other things, you realize it's pretty boring. And this environment is, you get the bug. And I think it's the environment. I mean, the combination of meeting all sorts of different people and characters on a daily basis, whether it's politicians or sponsor representatives or representatives from the host cities or athletes or the press. And it's such a mix and such a combination of impressions on a daily basis, and so many highs and lows and contrasts that it's so stimulating. I don't think you can find that anywhere else in the world, to be honest. I haven't found it anywhere else anyway. It's a privilege to be able to be part of it. Not always easy, but globally, I think the positive moments are definitely in majority to the negative, but the contrast are also what makes it so interesting.
You and business partner Richard Brizius took over the race during the last iteration, during the Volvo, and a lot has changed. Not all your initiatives, I know, some were in place before, but we now have two fleets, IMOCA and the VO65s that everyone's familiar with. Just explain to our listeners the makeup of this edition. How's it all going to work?
I mean, I would say, to be honest, this edition is a bit of a transition from the Volvo Ocean Race to the Ocean Race. And what I mean by that is that we have partly a new team, we have new boats, to a large degree new skippers, we have new media deals and cooperation. It's a lot of new things. And also with the fleets, we've been working with the IMOCA club. We started to talk together to discuss about 5 years ago. And we are still in a process, on a voyage together with the class, I would say, because in offshore sailing, in my view, you have one world, what's going on in France, and you have another world, what's going on outside France. And what we are trying to, I mean, it's been some really good sailors like Samantha Davis and Alex Thompson and now Boris, for example, who have been attracted to what's going on in France, and they have been sort of participating in the French events and love that. But this is the first time when a properly French class actually races a big international event. So what is happening now is that the French, more single-handed oriented sailors and campaigns are moving slowly towards more crude sailing. And the international teams who are at the moment not very interested in single-handed sailing are coming into the class through the crude side of things, and I think some of them will also do single-handed. So we are creating a bigger and bigger overlap of what's going on in France and what's going on in the international scene. And it takes time, but the momentum now is there, and we have a number of teams from the IMOCA class who are not taking part in this edition, but who are here now and who are confirmed that they are definitely doing the next time. So it is clearly going in the right direction, but you don't change that overnight. It's a long process, but it's very stimulating, particularly now when it's really going the right way.
We've got 8 stopovers. So, from that perspective, it's not too different to the past. But looking at the course map, Johan, one is immediately drawn to leg 3. Over 30% of the race in one hit. From Cape Town across the Indian and Pacific Oceans to Capes, Lewin and Cape Horn, and north up to Itajaí in Brazil. No stops in Asia, Australia, or New Zealand. I'm just wondering, how far was that a commercial decision, a decision based on COVID and close borders, etc.? I mean, it goes without saying, it's got to be the longest leg in the race ever.
Yeah, no, that's clearly the case. Now, I mean, to be honest, it wasn't the plan, because we were meant to go to China and New Zealand, but it was a completely COVID related, to be honest. But then once we realized we cannot, because we needed to know a year ago whether we could go to China and New Zealand, because it affects all the other stakeholders and stopovers. So we needed to have the plan. And particularly in the case of China, there were a lot of preparations needed. So we needed to know early, and they said themselves, it's impossible for us. We don't know what's going to happen. So it was COVID driven, but then when it sort of happened or was about to happen, we realized for the 50th anniversary of the race, maybe it's not so bad to have this long epic leg, which I think will be sort of remembered forever. We will see what happens. I doubt we will do it again, but for this sort of particular edition with the transition and the anniversary, we think it's pretty cool actually in the end. Hopefully we'll say that in a few months as well, but that's how we feel about it now.
I mean, having said that, from a sailing perspective, it's going to be epic, isn't it? The entire Southern Ocean in one leg.
It is. It's unique in the world, and we've actually been discussing maybe we should have a race, just a Southern Ocean race in the future, just to go around the Antarctica. So we will see. I think we will be in a better position to evaluate when they hopefully all reach Itajaí safely. But it will be a unique experience, and I think that's the main thing that the sailors are talking on the dock already now. So really looking forward to that.
What do the sailors think about it? The big leg. What are their thoughts?
I think it depends a lot. Some are a bit afraid and worried, and others are, I need to do this, I really want to do this. So I think it's a mix, and I think it's a bit of, depends on the discussion and the day, but it creates this buzz, which is already very positive, I think. Then it's not going to be easy, and everybody maybe will not like it, but that's what it is. It isn't for everyone.
It's a great story. I can't wait to see it all unfold. Previously, of course, the boats have been, well, the Volvo class, like the 65s that we see here on the dock in Alicante. The IMOCAs are not so different, but also, of course, they're equipped with foils. They're very technical racing machines, mostly sailed single-handed in the Vendee Globe or the Route de Rhum. I'm wondering, crewed with foiling boats, are we going to be seeing a much faster ocean race this time around? I mean, what are your thoughts on the performance?
I mean, it's we don't really know yet. For sure, it will be fast. I think the IMOCAs, the way, since they are traditionally, it was quite a few crewed races on the IMOCA calendar, but the single-handed is working so well in France, so they've sort of gone away from that. And that means that we don't know at this point the true potential of these boats. So I think that's going to be super interesting to see. And they have evolved a lot the last couple of years, but I think it will be faster most of the time, but you also have conditions when, if it's upwind or lighter conditions or a bit fluky, they are not the quickest. So, but crewed, I think in the last Vendee, from what I have gathered, they were sailing the boat at about 70% of the potential, single-handed. And I think now they will be mainly sitting somewhere between 90 and 100. So for sure it will be different, and particularly with the foiling, which is a bit delicate. I think with the crew, they can keep the boat foiling a lot more. And once they foil, they go 6-7 knots quicker directly. So honestly, we don't know for sure, but in most conditions that the race will take place in, particularly if you don't go to Asia and get the light winds and another 2 doldrums and all that, it's going to be fast, I would say two-thirds, 3/4 of the time. But we've been trying to update our polars and our information as much as we can, because the ETAs, when they arrive, is very important to us. But it's still quite a bit of uncertainty around that. And the teams haven't sailed that much crewed yet. So even they are not very certain of what's going to happen. So it's a bit of an adventure and a discovery at the same time.
It feels like there's a lot of unknowns all around. I've spoken to all the skippers, and obviously you. There's a lot of learning that's going to take place in this edition.
Absolutely. But that's what makes it very interesting, I think. I mean, I think next time will be quite different, because then we will have learned a lot, and I think the fleet will be bigger, and so that's another phase. But this phase is pretty interesting as well, I think.
So the race start is, well, less than a day away, as we've said. I mean, there hasn't been an edition for almost 5 years. The last Volvo finishing in The Hague in 2018, of course. How big is this race, do you think, in our sport? Historically, the Whitbread, the Volvo, and now the Ocean Race. How important is this race within the sport of sailing?
I personally, I think it is internationally. Ocean racing and sailing, it's so different depending on what country we are talking about. If you go to France, not that many people know about the Ocean Race, and everybody knows about the Vendee Globe and the Route de Rome. If you go to Italy or Holland, for example, they don't know what the Vendee Globe is, and they're the Ocean Race. So it's very nationally based, but generally speaking, I would say the peak period was probably late 90s, when you have all the big names who did it. And I think the event has lost a bit of attraction since then. And that's what the mission we are on now, to rebuild that. And I think the main reason, there are many reasons, but the main one why it lost a bit of attraction is it was never a long-term plan in place. It was done more on ad hoc. You do one edition, evaluate and continue. And now we are in a position to work with a long-term plan. We know the next one will happen in 4 years, the Ocean Race Zero. And I think that will, and more, maybe a bit less commercial and more focus on the sport. And I think we are on a good track to make it sort of the undoubtful sort of main ocean race in the world. But it's still a voyage we are on. I mean, after this transition, that's the main focus. And the feeling now and the talk now and the way things are going, I think we will definitely get there, because the main ingredients of this event are so great. So it's starting to go in the right direction again. But it is. I wouldn't say with Volvo. It was a lot of advantages, created a lot of stability, great brand, and all that. But it also became, maybe in my personal sort of viewer taste, a bit too corporate and not long-term enough. And particularly now working with a lot of the French teams and in the IMOCA class, they are all used to work with at least a 4-year horizon and plan. So announcing the future editions now already changes a lot on how they think, and it will. I can bet with you that we will be at a very high quality fleet of at least 10 IMOCA boats next time, at least, and that it's going to really, from a sporty point of view, go the right way again.
Well, I'm excited to watch that, but excited very much to watch this edition as well. I think it'll be fascinating.
Yeah, it's super important that this one goes well. That's for sure. That's a stepping stone for the future. So,
Johan, well done for getting everyone to the start line. I know it's been a massive undertaking, and all the very best for the race. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
It's an issue that split many in offshore sailing. My view, if the ocean race is to be at the pinnacle of the sport, it needs to be raced in the sport's most progressive boats. And right now, for offshore sailing, that's the IMOCA fleet. Many of which already exist, several of which are always in build. It's going to be a fascinating race, and if it goes well, I'm thinking a fleet of foiling IMOCAs crossing the start line next time around. The future could be very exciting. Our final guest is a man new to this race, but in no way new to the IMOCA or offshore sailing. His previous IMOCA SMA won him the IMOCA Route de Rome title in 2018, having had to retire from the 2016 Vendee Globe with keel issues. Paul Mayhat has assembled a talented French crew on board his IMOCA Biotherm, and as I voice this, is lying in 4th place just 25 miles behind Malizia. Paul, it is great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for your time. How are you feeling on the eve of what I'm thinking is your first ocean race?
Yes, it's a lot of excitation, but we are so busy because the boat was just launched a few months ago, and so we still have many things to do, and the start is tomorrow. So I don't have the time to, to stress or other things.
No time to worry about what's ahead. You're no stranger to offshore, of course, a multiple Vendee Globe sailor, winner of the Rotterdam and the IMOCA in 2018, and just back from the Rotterdam in biotherm. I mean, how did that go? From memory, I think you had a few issues with the boat.
During the run, yeah, but it was quite unexpected to do this result. Because, before the Rotterdam, I only stayed 10 days on the boat. So, just to be at the finish line, to cross the finish line was seems like quite a victory. But we did better than that. So during the first part of the race, I think I was third at the moment, and in the battle with the first guy. And just at the end, I have an issue with my rudder. So just the last 2 days was not really racing days.
Are you happy with the boat? I did read you said you think it has huge potential. I mean, are you happy with it? How much harder can you push with a crew on board, sailing full power 24 hours a day?
Yeah. This boat have a lot of potential. We built it really quickly because the story started 1 year ago, and in this year, we built the boat, we trained, we did the Rotterdam, we did 2 transat, and we are here. So that's huge. That's quite big effort that technical staff I did, because I participate a lot with the building. But yes, this boat is what I always wanted to do is a simple, really simple boat. It's a like minimalist boat. Really pragmatic. There's nothing inside. Really no systems. So it's light, and for the IMOCA rules, because the IMOCA is an open rule, but you just have to be in a box. So this boat is quite good for transition, for light wind, I think. So yeah, we are happy, and we don't really know about the potential. We never push it a lot. So it will be interesting. We probably will learn and improve during the race.
And the opportunities to learn about the boat with more people on board, I'm assuming is even greater. The intensity and the pace of learning in this race is going to be high.
It's totally different. The first thing is when you are alone, you are sleeping, you are eating, you are fixing the issue. So you're not always focused to go faster. You take average trimming, and after you don't touch because it's not possible. So with few people it's better. And the other thing is we will fight against other boats, and we have stopover, so we can stop the boat and do modification during the legs. And that's totally a new way for us, a new way of sailing. And other thing, when you're sailing alone, you learn about yourself, not about the boat. And when you have many crews, you can have opportunity to learn about different backgrounds, different way of saying. Me, I'm more, I said with my feeling. I'm not a number guy, and so I will learn a lot with a specific technician, engineers, and no, that's great.
Your previous IMOCA SMA was one built without foils, and as we've said, you had some success in it. And maybe for our listeners, give us a bit of an idea how different sailing now is with foils. What are the differences on board when you're powered up and flying along? The boats are quite similar, but with the foils, you are more sailing like in multi-hull. Now IMOCA, it's the same speed than Trimaran Orma 20 years ago. So that's
really different, but the boat is a boat and it's still the same, but the acceleration is more intense and you can lose the speed with apparent wind. Apparent wind is the key, is really important, like on multi-hull, you know, and so you have to making your own wind every time. So that's why in crew, probably better. We will probably go faster with the crew on boat because it's a lot of work on a foiling boat. But for the Vendee Globe or for single end, if you are not pushing the boat at the max, probably a digger boat is better. SMA was a really great boat, and what I can say is we don't care about the boat, but if you sail a lot with your own boat during 4 years, you're gonna improve the speed about 20% with no modification, just the way you're gonna sail. So that's why I want to do all the race of the program.
New to this race, of course, is the autopilot. Let's talk a little bit about that. Everyone's talked about that. You know, you're sailing inside, you're not driving the boat, you don't necessarily have the same kind of feel that you would have had in a VO65. Just talk to me a little bit about that relationship between the numbers and the data and the autopilot and getting the maximum out of the boat.
Yeah, as I said, I'm not a number guy. I'm more of, I sail with my feeling, and I always, all my life, I sailed with autopilot. So it's not only number on autopilot. For me, it's a fifth crew, you know, and you have to work with it. But I was sure that we will sail only with pilot, and now I'm not so convinced. So because in a light wind, in a transition, we probably steer the boat because you can feel it. So yeah, I know we're gonna try, but it's sure that for rogue condition, the pilot is better. It's not because we don't want to steer; it's just because he's better than us.
Yeah.
It's better because he's never tired. He's going straight, and yeah.
And it learns. It doesn't it? It gets better and better. It learns more and more.
Yeah. And you can now. We have a lot of settings that we can use. You can use heading and wind that everybody know, but we can also use the heel of the boat, the pitch. We have speed mode. We have apparent, and you can add all this step. And so that's really interesting. And when you're sailing alone, you use a pilot, but you never check if it's always doing this good thing. And we can have always two people in the cockpit to check if the pilot is okay, what we can do to go faster. So that's a good development for us. Yeah.
Interesting. There's lots to learn. Let's talk a bit about sailing. I mean, as I said, solo sailing is really your thing. It's been your career. How is it going to be skippering a crew offshore for you? How prepared are you for that? Is it going to be a challenge, a big challenge for you?
It's probably the biggest challenge for this race to manage a crew. So I try to reduce this challenge. I choose single end people on my crew, so that means that I don't have to manage them for all. They are usually sailing on IMOCA. They already all did around the world. 3 of them did Vendee Globe, so I don't have to say, oh, do this, do that. So they know. So that's hopefully for me because we never train together. So I need to win time. So I choose them for that. But other part is that will be the first time I'm in charge of people. And you have to protect them, to take care of them, to bring them alive at the end of each leg. So that means also that I choose them because they are safety. I know that safety people, they know the job, they know IMOCA, they know the Southern Ocean, and I will be probably a bit stressed for the first days, but after it will be better probably. But it's sure that I have experience of double end sailing because we do every 2 years in France. We have Transat Jacques Vabre, and you sleep better when you're single hand that's in crew. Me, it's true.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. And but you know, when you are two on the boat, it's more. I more fear. I feel the fear because if the other guy fall in the water, you don't know. If you are four on the boat, it's better.
Let's not think about that. Let's think about something a bit more positive. When we think of offshore sailing greats, skippers and races, many of them are French. And in modern times, the Ocean Race has seen some big French success stories. Charles Caudrelier winning the last edition, Franck Camas 2 editions before that. How big is this race at home, and what would it mean to you to be on that list of winners?
I think the Ocean Race in France is big for specialists, but it's not a famous race at the other one. We get skills about offshore sailing. It's true in France. France is the country of offshore sailing because we have Eric Tabarly heritage, a legacy. So he managed all our way of training. So all is focused on offshore sailing. There's a lot of company, a lot of sponsors. It's a lot of money. So that we have maybe 200 or 300 women and men who are really strong and can do Ocean Race. So that's pretty good. But for the sponsors, they are more focused about Vendee Globe and Route du Rhum. So it's quite hard because last edition was won by a French, Charles Caudrelier, but not with a French company and a French sponsor. So it was not huge in France, like it could be in New Zealand when New Zealand win a race. It's like all the countries behind, and we don't feel that in France about this race. But I think it will come because with the change between now with IMOCA boats, we will bring all this company. I'm pretty sure that the next edition will probably 15, 20 boats on the line, on the starting line.
Back in Brittany, it's the community, the IMOCA community. Are they really watching this edition to see what happens? Do you think?
I think more than that. There was quite. They are jealous actually because they would be on the line, but they were not confident at the beginning. You know, when it's new, when it's not in France, you know, you have to make the effort and you have to take risk. And I think all the boats who are here have taken a lot of risk. I've taken a lot of risk to do this race, but I'm so happy and no regrets. It's sure that it's a huge event, a huge adventure. And yeah, I just want to say to the French, let's go, don't fear, go, and it will be great.
It could be exciting, couldn't it? I mean, obviously, as we've said, you've not done the Ocean Race before, Paul, but you've spent a lot of time offshore. We're seeing a different class of boat this time around. How difficult do you think it will be to stay competitive in this fleet on foiling boats? I mean, is that going to be even harder, pushing all the time on a foiling IMOCA as opposed to the previous 65s?
Probably, I don't have the experience of the race, but I have experience on IMOCA. What I said at the press conference is Charlie did the Ocean Race many times. I never did, but I said more on IMOCA than Charlie. So I'm not sure who is the best, but it's interesting. IMOCA are totally different with 65. 65, you have to push it 110% every time. IMOCA, if you push the IMOCA even 95%, sometimes you break the boat in quickly. So it shows that we have to be fast, we have to push the boat, but sometimes we have to reduce the speed and we have to protect the material. We probably have a lot of issues during the race, structural systems, foils, and so we have to be able to repair on the boat. You have to have good boat builder in the crew. Not only on the short team, and you have also to manage your material to don't push too much at the beginning of the race. Yeah, sure. So total different way of sailing. For the French, we are more building boats, light boat, faster sometimes, but we have to reduce. And probably the way of sailing of ocean race sailors is more pushing hard. And no, in France it's not that.
Yeah, you have to manage the risk.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about crew work. I mean, obviously some of the skippers are very experienced solo sailors, so used to managing the physical issues on board. But this race has always been sailed with much bigger crews, 8 plus the onboard reporter in the last edition, I think. And you're now 4 plus onboard reporter. How different does that make things? How do you think the dynamic will work on board with that number of people?
I don't know, because these boats are built for one. So there will be no job always for these too many people. So we probably have a lot of rest and sleep, but it's so uncomfortable inside. That means that it's not easy. Huh? The deal is because the boat is like quite violent and I don't know. That's why it's really interesting, this race, because we don't know what will happen. But probably it's on each boat, probably 2 watches with 2 people managing the boat, and it's hard, huh? Because you have to stay 4 hours, and after you have to sleep 4 hours. But you have to. We also have to, because we are not enough. So we are 2 and 2. So for me it's not possible to have one navigator on the boat, because you can't put a man or woman out of watch. So everyone should do a forecast, take the grid and make the renting. So you have to between each watch you have to tell the story really well between the watch. It's not like when you are 10. You are always guys who are staying between 2 watch, and it will be probably not possible. So you have to know really well your crew to be confident. Yeah.
Really trust each other.
Yeah. For me, it's totally new. The only races I did with this way of organization was a Sydney to Hobart. I did 4 times. But it's not my culture, it's not my background. On the Tour de France à la voile, I did a lot on far 30, but we don't sleep. Actually, we have two days races, but you hiking during 2 days, and it's different, totally different.
Just looking at it, I mean, I get the feeling it's going to be exhausting in a different way. I mean, we're used to seeing, the Whitbread and the Ocean Race. You're sailing outside, the waves are breaking over your head. But I look at this boat and think it's going to be exhausting in a different way. The intensity is different. And as you say, it's so uncomfortable. It's off the scale uncomfortable.
I think nobody can imagine what you feel when you are on the foil, because you're not totally on the foil. The back of the boat is bumping, and I remember during the Transat Jacques Vabre, during 2 days, your chest is just locked. You can just breathe a little bit, and if it's for 4 or 5 days, it's like just impossible. So after 1, 2, 3 weeks, it's better, but we're gonna stop. So if you stop, you have to start again. So could be hard sometimes, because the boat here, it's really hard to make fresh water because you are flying. So for water maker, it's quite an issue. You can't eat. It's not possible. The spoon is like, during 1 minute you try to put the spoon in your mouth, but it's not possible. So that's why I choose my crew is a lot of background, because it's like you can't live so a few hours sometimes on IMOCA. Yeah.
Well, Paul, it's going to be great to watch. It's going to be an exciting battle, and I think we don't really know what's going to happen. So fascinating for the sailing fan. All the very best. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's a busy day just before the race, and best of luck in the race. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
The very talented Paul Mayhart, giving us a little glimpse of what life is like charging along at over 20 knots on a foiling IMOCA. It sounds like even putting a spoon in your mouth is a challenge. I'm not sure that's for me. Well, that's it for this month. To all our skippers, sailors, their teams, and to the guys at the Ocean Race in Alicante, many thanks for your time, your hospitality, and all the very, very best for the rest of the race. Like many of our listeners, I should be glued to the tracker for the next few months. Until next time, if you're enjoying your 2 hours of monthly ad-free, no subscription listening, then please do help us to keep making the podcast. It takes a considerable amount of time to produce, so if you haven't done so, head on over to buymeacoffee.com/sailing podcast and do your bit to help us bring you these uninterrupted ad-free chats from the biggest names in the sport of sailing. Before we go, a big thanks to Tim at Vertigo Films, whose hard work and imagination makes these podcasts possible. Tim is down in Alicante working on the Ocean Race right now, so has been putting in the overtime to get this edition out. Tim, as ever, many thanks. Please keep in touch via social media. I'm Shirley Sale on Instagram and Twitter, and Shirley Robertson on Facebook. And let us know where you're listening. Well, that's all from us this month. Thank you so much for listening. Have fun on the water and sail safe, everyone.
This is Castle 1. Race officer speaking.
Leyline is on boundary up ahead, 35 seconds out.
A bit lower and faster here.
Ho, ho, ho. That's a good one, Jimmy.
Still gaining on the lane line there.
We're looking at 10.5 and 42. Matching him on the boundary, yeah. Copy.
This is Castle 1 standing by. Out.